Devin Nunes, earlier today, sent a letter to the Attorney General, as we've been telling you it is coming. For more than 2 years, the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, the committee, in parentheses, conducted a wide-ranging investigation into the Russian government's efforts to interfere in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. As part of that investigation, committee Republicans identified several potential violations of law. Given the sensitivity surrounding this matter, I will have my staff contact the department to arrange a time for Representative John Ratcliffe and me to brief you directly on the 8 criminal referrals. I appreciate your consideration of this matter. Now, the former head of the House Intelligence Committee, now Minority Leader, is Devin Nunes from California, their 22nd District. Welcome back, Congressman. Well, you said this was coming, so here it is.
Thanks, Sean, and thanks for all your work on this and making sure that the American people actually knew the truth. It's been a long road, but it's great today to be able to send this to the Attorney General. And we're prepared to brief them. It's quite exhaustive, and I think the Attorney General will find it quite interesting for the investigation that now we know that he's doing.
Well, let me go into the issue, which I think is very important here, because I'm assuming you're not going to name the names, but I think a lot of them are very obvious, at least to me, and I won't sit here and offer conjecture. You're not going to talk publicly about it at this point.
No, and it wouldn't be appropriate, right? Because a lot of this is highly sensitive, classified information. The Attorney General, everything that I've seen, he's a grown-up. And so, part of the reason why we're sending these over in this way, where we want to brief him directly, is because we have trust and confidence in him. So this isn't, one of these things where we have to get a bunch of media and hype it up. The fact of the matter is I want to send this to the Attorney General, brief him, let him look at it, ask us questions that he may have about this. And, look, these people that were involved in this, let's just say what we feel is inappropriate behavior, and we think that they broke the law, or we wouldn't refer them for criminal prosecution. Yeah. Look, they don't need to know what we know, and that's the bottom line. I mean, look, I think they all know who they are, but there could be other people that don't know that we've actually found out what they were doing was wrong. So I'm not going to give these guys any advantage and tip them off as to what we have.
Let me ask you, I keep saying and describing to our audience, there have been 4 separate conclusions as it relates to Trump-Russia collusion. The FBI 9-month investigation, even Page and Strzok, there's no there. Both of them saying it repeatedly. Lisa Page saying after 9 months they had nothing before the appointment of Mueller. We had the House Intelligence Committee investigation, which you ran. You found no evidence of collusion. The same with the bipartisan Senate committee investigation led by Senator Burr. Now the Mueller report couldn't be any more clear on the issue of collusion. But that's not stopping people on the other side, be it, people that have been selling conspiracy theories and outright lies and anonymous sources and breathless, hysterical reporting and pronouncements by people in Congress. But there is information. There's been a parallel investigation that I know you have been aware of on the front lines of discovering where there is real evidence. We have not only your criminal referrals, but we now know and have confirmation from this week that the Attorney General has formed a team to review the FBI and Department of Justice's actions during this probe. That will be big. The Inspector General Horowitz's report on FISA abuse, I think that's going to be big. Not sure exactly what John Hoover is going to come up with, but I expect it's going to be interesting. More closed-door testimony will be released. And then, of course, the President, in an interview with me a week and a half ago, talked about releasing the FISA applications, Gang of 8 materials, 302s, and we're awaiting a court potentially giving us some information on Christopher Steele that will be hopefully as revealing as I'm told it will be. And then, of course, now we have evidence. The Ukrainians want to give us evidence that they worked to influence our elections. Do you have plans to release those FISA applications, Gang of 8 information, the 302s of Bruce Orr and others, and the 5 buckets that John Solomon, as they call them?
I do. I have plans to declassify and release. I have plans to absolutely release. But I have some very talented people working for me, lawyers, And they really didn't want me to do it early on. One of the reasons that my lawyers didn't want me to do it is they said if I do it, they'll call it a form of obstruction. So they'll say, oh, you released these documents. So we would make all of this information transparent. You know, in politics, you always hear transparency. We'd make it transparent, and then they'd call it obstruction, knowing the people we're dealing with. So, frankly, I thought it would be better if we held it to the end. No, but at the right time, we will be absolutely releasing. And I did the right thing by not doing it so far. But you understand, they would call it something that it wouldn't be. It's the only time you'd be transparent where they'd say bad things about transparency.
A lot of stuff coming.
So there's a lot there. So let me tell you a couple things that I think are important here, and unpack some of this that's coming out and try to prioritize it. Number one is this Mueller dossier that I now call it, because this 400 pages and all this talk about releasing it. And remember, I was the first member of Congress to actually say all of this should be out. But what is important is the underlying information and how they reached their conclusions and what made it on the page of their 400-page Mueller dossier. Because I am convinced that with Weissman and all these other bad actors who should not have been involved in this in the first place, because they should have been conflicted out. I think a lot of your listeners understand this, but you had Weissman and another lawyer who were on Mueller's team who were part of the chain of custody of the Steele Democrat dirt dossier in 2016. So if there are all these people that are clamoring for transparency and they want to see the 400 pages, I just hope that the Attorney General goes farther than that and sends us all the information, all the underlying information, because I'm looking forward to looking into all of these people that were sitting on this 2-year witch hunt. I want to look at the work that they did. Just because you're on a special counsel doesn't mean you get special powers, and that we don't, as a Congress and a legislative branch, don't get to investigate you if you're not on the up and up. And I have a lot of reason to believe that Weissman and others were not on the up and up with the American people, and they're going to be held accountable also.
Do you believe, as I do, and I believe that these transcripts that have been released by Congressman Doug Collins, closed-door testimony, that, in fact, the investigation into Hillary Clinton and her email server was rigged, and they did it for the favored candidate that should win $100 million to zero, as Peter Strzok said, and he could smell, not the smelly Walmart voters that were voting for Donald Trump like me. Do you believe there was a fraud committed in the FISA courts by, A, withholding information from the court, that being that everybody had been told Hillary paid for it, it was unverified. We now know the dossier is unverifiable and largely debunked. And was that the bulk of information used?
Yeah, so look, from our memo that we put out over a year ago that they lied to the FISA court. So, and there was a whole bunch of other lying, which is why we want the rest of the so-called Comey mosaic. We want the rest of it out, too, because you'll see just how fraudulent they were and what they were willing to do to spy on the Trump campaign. And isn't it nice now that we can actually call it spying on the Trump campaign, because that's what they did? It's just been so ridiculous that we haven't been able to use that term spy. But let me say, I think another important part of all this, Sean, I think will answer your question. So I was going through some of my notes, just the history of this morning. And when we looked back when we first opened our investigation, the House Intelligence Committee's official investigation that was at the beginning of 2016. At that time, we had been already have ongoing briefings as it relates to Russia and counterintelligence investigations. And so remember, in January and February of 2016, I'm out there doing interviews and getting attacked in these interviews that was back when I used to talk to the Democrat-controlled media, and I would, take every question, and they would be like, "You don't know who Roger Stone is?" And what I would say was, I said, "Look, I have yet to see 1 ounce of evidence against any American at all, and a court, supposedly NSA, FBI, all the IC, CIA, everybody's giving us everything that they have on Russia that people are demanding." And I'm sitting there taking ridiculous questions from press people saying, "Look, I don't have any evidence of collusion." And what was interesting at that time, when I go back and look, and I don't know if you remember this, we had real work to do on the House Intelligence Committee at that time. And it was beginning such a circus that I actually said, look, this has become such a joke because we have no evidence after a couple months looking at this. So I'm going to have Trey Gowdy and Tom Rooney, two lawyers that were sitting on the Intelligence Committee. I'm basically going to put them on a task force and let them conduct all these interviews, because until somebody somewhere gives us an ounce of evidence, we're not going to waste time on this. We have real problems in this country and real challenges with the IC. So this is a couple months before Mueller comes on. There is no way on earth that Bob Mueller didn't know from day one when he walked in that door that there wasn't an ounce of evidence of Trump colluding with Russians, period.
That is an amazing statement and a shocking one. We'll take a break.
Driving liberals crazy. 3 hours a day, every day. The Sean Hannity Show is back on the air.
All right, big, breaking, busy news day here today. 800-941-SEAN if you want to be a part of the program. As we told you earlier in the program today, there has been a little bit of a shocking news event happening, and that is the Obama White House counsel, Greg Craig, has been charged by federal prosecutors for alleged lies about his work in Ukraine. We continue with the ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee. Devin Nunes is with us. He's with California's 22nd District. Thanks for sticking around. There's a lot happening. First, your reaction to, and by the way, your criminal referrals, which we've been talking about, and your letter to the Attorney General Barr about 8 specific. By the way, will there be more criminal referrals, do you think?
It's very possible, because as I said in the last segment, the Mueller dossier, once we go through that, we're going to hold all these people accountable too. And so if there's anything that made it into the Mueller dossier that's fake or phony or a lie, we're gonna investigate it. Also, on the positive side, there could be something. I mean, I'm hopeful. Hope springs eternal in this case, but hopefully the Mueller dossier actually gives us perhaps some more information, sheds more light on other people that we can hold accountable, and whether it's FISA abuse, other matters, unmasking, that sort of thing.
All right, this to me is a huge. I mean, we remember Greg Craig going back to the Clinton administration. He's an attorney. He was the Obama White House counsel, now charged by federal prosecutors for lies in Ukrainian work in his case, lying, hiding information related to the work. Of course, then we get back to the whole Foreign Agents Registration Act that really nobody had been held accountable till Mueller came on board. What's your reaction to that?
Do you know specifically, is he actually being brought up for lying to investigators?
Yeah.
And FARA? Is it both of them, or just the lying?
Charged by the department's Foreign Agents Registration Act, FARA, and also indicted for charges of lying and hiding information related to his work in Ukraine.
If we're going to have a fair justice system, then the law has to be equally enforced on both sides. So, look, the law's in place. I think that if you are working for a foreign government and you're lobbying on their behalf, you should have to register. That's why we have the law. Now, in the past, as you know, a lot of times this law has been enforced by somebody being able to go back in time and pay a fine and fill out the proper form. So, hopefully this will set a marker down and make sure that, every lobbyist, everybody in the swamp that's going to work for a foreign government. Look, let me just say, it's not a crime to work for a foreign government. But if you are going to do that, you should, make sure that you're being on the up and up. So all this information is transparent for the American people to see.
With the release of these closed-door testimonies, and we've had a number of them now, Bruce and Nellie Orr, for example, we learned that Bruce Orr, in fact, warned everybody about the Steele dossier, telling everybody Clinton paid for it. Remember, the money was funneled through a law firm to a research firm hiring Christopher Steele, a former MI6 agent, and that was not highlighted, we're told, in the FISA application at all. It was basically a random footnote about might have a political taint to it, rather than speaking boldly and clearly that the opposition party paid for it. So when we look at all of those things, I want to just dig down here. I see that as a fraud on the court. Now, we know that James Comey signed the first FISA warrant in October 2016, which, according to Rod Rosenstein, would mean that, to the best of his knowledge, it is true and accurate and has been, verified and corroborated. But then he told Donald Trump, president-elect, in January of 2017, that it's salacious but not verified. Wouldn't that mean that James Comey lied?
So, Sean, this is, as you know, one of our referrals is on conspiracy as it relates to FISA abuse and what we call other matters. So you can rest assured that a lot of what you're talking about there are the questions that we raise, where we believe that there is, circumstantial evidence that that people did more than just make a mistake. This was not a mistake. You point out they knew exactly where this information came from, and they chose to do word salads to basically have it both ways, where they could say, "Oh, we told the court," but in reality, they didn't tell the court.
That would be a fraud by omission. And now that we know it's unverifiable, they just basically took Hillary Clinton's political document and used it to violate citizens' constitutional rights, but it also gave them a backdoor to spy on the Trump campaign, which the Attorney General confirmed happened yesterday.
But this is why what we're referring over is the statute of conspiracy, right? So they conspire to do a lot of bad things, lie to federal judges. Okay, that's the easy one that you're pointing out. Mm-hmm. They obstructed justice. They defrauded the United States of America. They abused their power. What we're pointing out in our referral is people conspired to do this. Somebody conspired to decide not to tell the information that they knew directly, that from Christopher Steele, that he was biased, that he was against Trump, that this was paid for by Democrats. And I find it's impossible for me to believe that all these people at the Justice Department and the FBI just had no idea. That's why they had to leave it a vague footnote in the FISA application.
Well, with all due respect,
it's not believable to the American people.
Bruce Orr has testified that, in fact, he told everybody, warned everybody. And that was in August, before the October filing. Let me ask you about Hillary. Now that we have the closed-door testimony of people like Strzok and Page and James Baker, the general counsel, in other words, the top lawyer at the FBI, who thought he was fighting, he believed Hillary should have been indicted. That's an interesting part of his transcript that Doug Collins was able to give us yesterday, 2 days in a row. Mm-hmm. But more importantly, Strzok and Page said everything as it relates to the Hillary investigation was being run through the Attorney General's office. That would be, at the time, Loretta Lynch, who forced Comey to refer to it not as an investigation but a matter that was on a tarmac for 45 minutes just prior to the decision about Bill Clinton's wife supposedly talking about their grandchildren. And then, of course, we see, in spite of what Comey had said, they were writing an exoneration in May of 2016, before they actually interviewed Hillary or 17 other witnesses. Hillary's interview happened on July 2nd, 2016, and they allowed two other people in the room, and Peter Strzok, that thought Hillary should win $100 million to zero, did the interview. And then Comey exonerated her after they had changed the legal standard gross negligence to extreme carelessness. Do you believe this investigation was rigged? And if it was rigged, do we now need to reopen it?
Well, that's hard to say because, what we focused on, I want to make sure I'm not dodging your question. Just remember what we looked at. We looked at Russia collusion in depth. We looked at the FISA abuse and other matters in depth. We looked at unmaskings in depth. And so a lot of that investigation was done by Bob Goodlatte and the Judiciary Committee. They painstakingly went through all of that. Look, at the end of the day, it's complicated because you have to be able to prove conspiracy. Did they conspire to do it? Now, look, from a layman out there who hasn't seen all the information, it looks clear to me that they conspired.
Well, let me put it this way.
I think that's the point you're trying to make.
In the testimony, closed-door testimony, we now know that they took 40 emails, random emails of the 30,000. 40, and of the 44 were top secret, classified, and labeled as such. The Espionage Act, 18 U.S.C. 793, that is a clear violation of that law. That's a felony. And that's why I assume James Baker was saying, yeah, we should charge her if we have equal justice and equal application of our laws. But clearly they didn't want that to happen. Now, more importantly, if every Democrat is saying, well, maybe there's a nugget in the Mueller report that will show that Donald Trump obstructed, well, the obstruction statute needs to show intent, and Donald Trump hoping that, General Flynn doesn't get in trouble is not obstruction. He didn't stop the investigation.
Look, I can easily comment on the emails and the classified information on the emails. It's a crime. Okay, so it's plain and simple. It's a crime. So what? The thing we don't know about, because all those bad characters you just talked about were the ones who did the interview. We don't know what it is she said. Right, so if she basically denied it, and I assume that's what they're going with.
Don't we have intent when you
go back and
when you delete the 33,000? Isn't there intent when you acid wash the hard drive with bleach pit? Isn't that intent? When you bust up your devices, isn't that intent? Or you remove SIM cards?
Well, and it's more than look, it's not just that, but it's obstruction. It's obstruction of justice.
Exactly.
And that's what that is. So, the other issue I would say, too, is that when you go back, we talked a little about Clinton and a little bit earlier here, and when they were working on that investigation and how the same people that were involved in the Trump investigation, including with Russia, people forget, and this was in our report that's largely overlooked, that Comey briefed Lynch and Yates early in the spring of 2016. So they were in full motion and, briefing at the highest levels that they were investigating Trump for colluding with Russians. I mean, that's incredible. And so if you take that date, right, which is, we only know it's the springtime of 16. So Mueller doesn't get appointed for a full 12, 13 months after that. So you're telling me with the most sophisticated intelligence agencies ever created on the planet, after 13 months of investigation, you don't have 1 ounce of evidence that anybody was colluding with Russians. Think about that.
Let me ask, and that's key. Now, let me ask you this with the Assange news today. I think it's a little bit odd. Now, I know I've talked to many, many people that are in the intelligence community. I won't ask you to know. You know things that I don't know. And the general consensus is, and I interviewed him in January 2017. I've interviewed him on the radio. And I've asked him, did you get this? I was very clear. We have the question. Did you get this from Russia or anybody associated with Russia? He says, no state party, not Russia, etc. All right. Wouldn't the one person that would know the answer to those questions be Assange? Now, I know he's being brought up on charges related to the Afghanistan release, et cetera, et cetera. Why was he never approached? Because I've got to believe that if he told me the truth, there would be forensic proof of such. And if he didn't tell the truth and it was Russia, there would be proof of that as it relates to the...
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, what I would say about Assange is this, that what he did with the Snowden and Manning leaks, it was really bad and really dangerous. And I guess the case that they're making here now, look, it's the people that did those that perpetuated those crimes, they were busted for it. In fact, one was released early, if I remember correctly. Snowden is still on the run. Those guys need to absolutely be prosecuted. The claim, as I understand it, I have not read the indictment yet, is that Assange was working in conjunction to get to figure out ways to break the codes down to get the information. So that would be problematic for Assange, and that's got to be proven in court. As it relates to the Russia matters, that stuff is still classified at this time, and it's hard for me to really comment on it.
All right, got to take a break. More with the ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee, Devin Nunes, and his letter, criminal referral letter to Attorney General Barr, and all the other issues associated with it straight ahead. All right, right, as we continue, he is the ranking member of the House Intel Committee. Devin Nunes is with us. One of the things that bothers me, you warned everybody in 2014 that Russia was going to pull this crap on us again, and that they do it against other countries. Nobody listened to you. You were right. You were right. And now we see the Ukraine is admitting that they tried to help Hillary in the 2016 election. Nobody cares because it's not against Donald Trump. And what bothers me in all of this is, and this is what was so serious about the Clinton email server issue, is that why have we in all these years as a country, knowing that these hostile regimes, Russia is a hostile regime, Putin a hostile actor, why haven't we built the defenses to prevent this? This has gone on for, 30 years and we haven't built a defense capable of stopping this yet. Why?
Well, we're always, to be fair, I mean, we do spend a lot of money, trying to build this infrastructure to combat the Chinese, Russians, Iranians, North Koreans, other bad actors. We spent a lot of money doing it. I think the more important point, though, that you brought up there, Sean, is that we had administration after administration who wanted to cozy up to Putin. Okay? I mean, going back to Bill Clinton, starting with Bill Clinton, then all through George W. Bush, all through the Obama administration. And largely, if you go back and you look, Donald Trump's position that they claimed, oh, my God, they were frightened by the words that Donald Trump was saying about the Russians. It was no different than what Hillary or Obama or George W. Bush or Condoleezza Rice or anybody
was saying
true. About Putin.
By the way, the only one caught on tape colluding was your friend, the cowardly Schiff, but Adam Schiff. Congressman, thank you for spending the hour with us. We appreciate your time. Very enlightening.